Now to a very big debut on the Nasdaq this morning. WisdomTree, one of the world's top ETF managers. The investment house manages 46 exchange-traded funds and has a total of $12 billion worth of assets under management. Now, until today, the firm was trading over the counter. Now it's on the Nasdaq under the ticker WETF. Joining us now is WisdomTree CEO Jonathan Steinberg, and with him, the chairman, Michael Steinhardt. Welcome to InBusiness, both of you. Jonathan, first off, what changes now that you're actively traded on the Nasdaq?
Well, I think, it's like an inflection point for the company. It allows us to raise the profile of WisdomTree, and as the first publicly traded pure play ETF sponsor, it allows us to bring attention to the ETF industry in general. And the ETF industry is one of the fastest growing segments of the financial service industry. So I think it's going to help us to just grow more quickly.
Well, we've seen, Jonathan, such a sucking of assets really into more hard assets. That's where capital has gone of late because of these dual debt crises and nervousness. Where are you seeing investors allocate capital now?
So where we're seeing the most inflows is emerging market debt. So we have two debt funds. In fact, one of them we launched this year is the most successful new fund launch in the ETF industry year to date. Asian local debt, ticker ALD, has raised more than $500 million. Another area where we've seen a lot of growth is the Brazilian currency fund, BZF. And again, both of these, I think, are from investor standpoint, diversifying away from the dollar, seeking higher yields.
Now, you've seen in the ETF industry some forecasts that ETFs are going to put the nail in the coffin of the mutual fund industry, but you've still got competition in there. You've got Charles Schwab, you've got Vanguard getting competitive on fee rates. Do you intend to lower yours?
Well, we have a very differentiated product set. So from a fee standpoint, we're already a very low fee firm. So I'm not feeling any fee pressure, but we're already competing with these firms extremely well. Last year was our best year ever. We took in $3.1 billion of new money, or 2.7% of the industry's assets. This year, in the first 6 months, we've already taken in $3.4 billion and roughly about 5% of the industry's assets. So we're doing, we are really thriving and competing very well today.
Michael Steinhardt, our audience knows you very well as a hedge fund manager. You're also chairman of WisdomTree. You own about a third of the company, I believe. Are you going to maintain that stake?
I'm not sure I will maintain all of it over time, but I certainly will maintain most of it, perhaps all of it. And it's been a great investment, and I envisage it continuing to be a good investment. Indeed, when I look back on the 7 years, and it's only been 7 years since Jono and I met, it's been perhaps the best investment I've ever made.
Really? Well, I know recently you've talked about some of your investments shorting U.S. T-bills. What's the biggest bet you're making now?
Well, I guess my investment in WisdomTree is probably the biggest investment relative to my total assets. But in terms of speculation, my biggest investment, if you call it an investment, is being short the 2-year Treasury.
And you're maintaining that. Is that something that you think other investors should be able to access?
That's an interesting question. Most investors don't short securities, and they certainly don't short Treasury bills. So I'm not comfortable in recommending it.
I ask that because, of course, ETFs offer different options to retail investors to take positions these days. I'm wondering if you saw an opportunity for some kind of new product in there. But I want to ask you, when you look at what one of your peers did today, George Soros, his fund making it public that they're no longer going to take outside money, just focus on managing the family's assets. Part of that attributed to the burden of registration, the burden of new compliance under financial regulation. Do you think this is a trend? Are we going to see more high-profile exits?
Well, we've already seen a fair number of high-profile exits, and most of them have not related to regulation, even though regulation is an issue. But the hedge fund industry has come awfully long way. I exited in 1995, and since then there have been quite a few. You have to remember, when the hedge fund industry started, it wasn't a business. It was something different. It attracted a relatively few people who considered themselves people who could consistently achieve superior performance. Today, it's a very different business.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those other high-profile exits. One of George Soros's mentees, Stan Druckenmiller, obviously leaving the business of managing outside money as well. Do you think that there's something about the size of funds these days? I mean, do you think the era of funds over $30 billion, it really beating out market averages, is something of the past? I mean, is there a fundamental shift in what it's like to run a fund right now?
Well, when I was doing it, there used to be a phrase that we'd use called diseconomy of scale. And $30 billion was inconceivable in the not-too-distant past. And yes, there are disadvantages in large amounts of money. And large amounts of money mean meaningfully less than $30 billion. And when I was doing it, the objective was the best possible performance, and the best possible performance is indeed constrained by large amounts of money.
Before I let you go, I just want to clarify something there. You said your biggest bet right now in terms of investment was on WisdomTree, but in terms of speculation, betting against U.S. debt, essentially. What is changing in terms of the conversation in Washington right now that might make you reverse that position?
Well, I don't think anything that's happening in Washington right now will change my mind. When I think about what's happening in Washington right now, I think of an expression that was used in Wall Street a long time ago. That is that we're up to our knees in midgets. And that's what I think about when I think about Washington right now. And I guess that's a terrible thing to say, but to think about the fact that we're a week away from a default or a pseudo-default is a reflection of the fact that Washington is less than a place of great intellectual wisdom.
Well, I could keep talking to the both of you, but I'm told I got to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today. Jonathan Steinberg, CEO of WisdomTree, and Michael Steinhardt, Chairman of WisdomTree as well.